Hey guys, tonight we're going to take a little dip back in time to ancient Rome. Well, not literally. You're not getting in the water, but imagine the grandeur of a Roman bathhouse stretching before you. The warm steam wafts around your face, and the sounds of splashing and gentle chatter fill the air. Picture marble pillars towering above and the soothing heat of the caldarium. That's the hot bath for you and me. But wait, here's a twist. You're not alone in your soaking. There's a dog beside you, panting happily as you both bask in the luxury of this ancient spa. Welcome to the fascinating world of Roman baths, where even pets got the VIP treatment. And let's be real, you probably wouldn't survive a day in this social bathing culture without a little preparation. You might think it's all bubbles and relaxation, but the Romans had a different idea of clean. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Don't worry, I won't ask you for a tip, unless you want to share your favorite bathhouse experience. Oh, and while you're at it, post your location and local time so we can travel together across time zones and centuries. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Roman baths. If you've ever daydreamed about ancient civilizations, you've probably imagined some version of these colossal, lavish spaces where the wealthy would spend hours relaxing, chatting, and maybe even conducting a little business. But beyond the luxury, the Romans had a much deeper reason for these elaborate bathhouses. The baths were not only about personal hygiene, they were a cultural institution. Think of them like an ancient spa, but also a social networking hub, a place for relaxation, and for Romans, an essential part of daily life. These public baths, or thermae, were grand structures that could accommodate hundreds of people at a time. And the baths were free or inexpensive, available for people of all classes, even though those with money could certainly make a show of it. Now let's pause for a second. Imagine yourself stepping into one of these bustling bathhouses, and there you are, surrounded by steamy air, soaking alongside your fellow Romans. This isn't a quiet, private spa experience. No, this is an immersive, communal ritual. There's a whirl of activity, the hum of conversation, the sound of splashing, and even the occasional bark of a dog. Yes, dogs were common bathhouse companions, and we're going to dive into that peculiar little detail soon. But first, let's talk about how these baths became so ingrained in Roman society. The Roman baths were far more than places to scrub away the day's dust. They were vital community spaces, cultural hubs that brought Romans of all backgrounds together under one roof. In fact, Roman baths were a cornerstone of daily life, and their design reflected this importance. The process of bathing itself was elaborate, almost ritualistic in nature. Romans didn't just walk in and dip into some water. They underwent a series of stages, almost like a spa day, designed to cleanse not just the body, but also the soul. The baths were so much more than hygiene. They were about rejuvenation, socializing, and even political networking. First, you would enter through the apoditerium, which was the changing room. It was usually crowded with people undressing and getting ready for their bath. But, as you would quickly discover, this wasn't just an isolated event. It was part of the larger social experience. You might strike up a conversation with someone there, a politician, a soldier, or a local baker. The baths were full of such people, and with their polite banter and casual conversations, the apoditerium was the perfect place to start your day. Just imagine, you could run into someone famous in Rome or even negotiate a business deal, all while simply changing your clothes. Next came the frigidarium, the cold bath. Now this was a real shock to the system. You'd immerse yourself in the frigidarium to tighten the skin and stimulate the circulation, but also as a way to cool down after the heated conversations you might have had in the previous room. The temperature contrast was invigorating, but it wasn't just about comfort, it was about balance. And what's better for balance than a good freezing dunk in a cold pool, right? Historians still argue whether this step was purely for health benefits or if it had a social aspect as well. Some believe it was an opportunity for Romans to wake up from the effects of lounging in the warm baths, which brings us to the next stage. After the cold pool, you would enter the warm bath, or tepidarium. This was the room where most Romans spent their time socializing, and where, quite unexpectedly, pets started making an appearance. Romans didn't just bring their dogs to the baths for the comfort of their pets, they brought them as symbols of status. A person who could afford to bring their dog with them to the baths was signaling something important. They had wealth, influence, and social standing. It was an odd practice, but in a society so obsessed with image, it made perfect sense. And let's be clear, it wasn't just any dog. These were the same types of dogs that were often prized for their beauty, loyalty, and even their usefulness. Some dogs were bred specifically to serve in various roles, guarding homes, hunting, or accompanying their owners to important public events. When you walked into a Roman bathhouse, you weren't just walking into a spa. You were entering a stage of sorts, where everything, including your pets, had a role to play. By the time you reach the tepidarium, the warm room where most of the soaking happens, you're probably feeling a lot more relaxed. The temperature is just right, comfortable, soothing, but not too hot. It's here that the real magic of Roman social life unfolds. The tepidarium was where people spent the longest amount of time during their bath, soaking and chatting away the hours. If you're anything like the Romans, you're probably enjoying this moment of peace, but also eyeing the social scene happening around you. Yes, there's a lot of politicking going on in the background, business deals, gossip, even the occasional heated argument. But there's also something else going on here, something you might not expect. There are dogs, not just as companions, mind you, but as cultural symbols, creatures that carried as much social weight as their owners. You might spot a distinguished-looking dog lounging at its owner's feet or trotting beside someone's sandals. These weren't just pets, they were assets. The presence of a well-groomed, well-behaved dog at the bathhouse was a sign that the person accompanying it had some wealth and influence. In Roman society, your dog could be as much of a status symbol as the clothes you wore or the friends you kept. Historians debate how far the practice of bringing pets to baths really extended. Some argue it was a relatively minor trend, while others claim it was a key part of Roman identity. But the role of pets in Roman life wasn't simply for status. Dogs, in particular, had a significant role in Roman households, being much more than just loyal companions. They were integral to family life, and their presence in the bathhouse wasn't unusual. Romans treated their pets with a surprising amount of care, and their dogs were as much a part of the household as any human member. There are records that indicate Romans had specialized food for their pets, and dogs were often seen as family members. For some wealthy Romans, their pets weren't just for protection or companionship, they were little furry symbols of how much they'd made it in Roman society. It's a far cry from today's view of pets as just pets, isn't it? But in the Roman world, a dog could very well be a living representation of your success. These dogs weren't just sitting idly by during bath time, they were part of the Roman experience, just as much as the beautiful marble pools and the heated floors. Historians often note that Romans had a deep attachment to their animals, and this attachment extended beyond the family home and into public spaces. The baths, as public spaces, became one of the most visible places to showcase this bond. And let's not forget that this was a very public display. Imagine you're soaking in the tepidarium, your dog by your side, and a friend walks in. The two of you start chatting about the latest gossip, and your dog's lying there relaxing as if it owns the entire room. It's a very different world from the private spaces we're used to today. You're not just attending a bath, you're participating in a public spectacle where the rules of decorum and social order are on full display. Dogs were there not just to relax and enjoy the bath, but to be a part of a larger performance of wealth, culture, and status. Historians still argue whether bringing dogs to baths was an intentional part of the Roman bathing ritual or if it was simply a matter of convenience. After all, these bathhouses were often built near homes, and dogs were accustomed to going with their owners wherever they went. Some scholars believe that pets in baths were more about Roman convenience than any social statement. But whatever the reason, it's clear that the practice took hold in a big way. As you continue to soak in the warmth of the tepidarium, surrounded by the soft murmur of conversation and the occasional bark of a dog, it's hard not to marvel at the oddness of it all. Dogs weren't just laying around passively, they were involved in the action. But while the Roman elite may have brought their dogs to the bathhouses as symbols of wealth and status, the deeper connection between humans and their pets in the Roman world can't be ignored. The bond between Romans and their dogs was far more complex than a mere show of affluence. You might be surprised to learn that the ancient Romans were incredibly affectionate toward their pets, and dogs in particular were considered part of the family. In fact, dogs were often buried with their owners, as shown by archaeological findings in Roman tombs. In many cases, the inscriptions on these tombstones speak not only of the deceased human, but also of their beloved canine companions. Imagine this. You're a Roman noble, and your dog has been with you through thick and thin, walking beside you to the baths, keeping you company while you host lavish feasts, or running beside your chariot during a grand procession. When you die, it's only fitting that your loyal dog should be buried with you to join you in the afterlife. But beyond loyalty, there was a deep cultural significance to the presence of dogs in Roman life. Dogs were seen as guardians, protectors, and even helpers in more practical tasks like hunting. Some dogs were even trained to perform specific jobs, such as herding or pulling small carts. It wasn't just about companionship. It was about utility, and Romans appreciated their pets' practical value just as much as their affectionate qualities. A well-trained dog could be as valuable as a slave or a servant, performing work that would have been difficult for a human to do. Yet, even with all the practical value of dogs, Romans still saw them as more than just workers. The relationship between the Roman people and their dogs was a blend of functionality and sentiment. Historians have found inscriptions on tombs that express genuine love and affection for dogs. And it was clear that these pets weren't just viewed as tools, but as loyal family members. The idea that your pet could be considered a full-fledged member of the family, someone worthy of being with you even after death, speaks to the deep emotional connection Romans had with their animals. Even the Roman poet Ovid, known for his witty and sometimes sardonic commentary on Roman life, wrote lovingly about dogs. He compared them to loyal servants who, like good friends, never betrayed their owners. His affection for dogs was so apparent that he penned multiple poems about their virtues, praising their loyalty and their ability to be both companions and protectors. It's a testament to the fact that while the Romans were known for their stoic and sometimes ruthless attitudes, they had a softer, affectionate side when it came to their pets. This relationship between Romans and their dogs wasn't just about affection, though. Dogs were often included in public life, showing up in baths, public squares, and even at the dinner table. Historians argue that the practice of bringing pets to bathhouses was just one example of how deeply integrated animals were in Roman society. Dogs weren't isolated to private homes. They were out and about in the public spaces. And this inclusion in everyday life created a unique bond that transcended mere ownership. But while dogs were certainly the star of the pet scene in Roman baths, they weren't the only animals brought into these spaces. There are also records of other pets, birds, for example, being brought along for the ride. Just imagine walking into a Roman bathhouse with the scent of oil and heated marble in the air, only to be greeted by the fluttering of a bird perched on a patron's shoulder. The diversity of pets in these spaces shows just how ingrained animals were in the public life of the Romans, adding a touch of the wild and unpredictable to the otherwise regulated environment of the baths. This mix of affection, status, and functionality made the Roman bathhouse not just a place of cleansing, but also a place where the lines between human and animal blurred. The public bath became a symbol of both Roman luxury and the deep bond between people and their pets, a connection that, surprisingly, hasn't changed all that much through the centuries. While we no longer bring our dogs into spas or have them lounging beside us in public baths, the attachment we feel toward our animals is just as strong, just as real as it was for the Romans centuries ago. As you continue to relax in the tepidarium, soaking in the warmth and listening to the soft sounds around you, it becomes clear that the Roman baths weren't just places of hygiene, they were also about sensory experiences. The heated marble floors, the smell of oils and perfumes that lingered in the air, the sounds of conversation and laughter. It was a complete immersion into the senses. And in this environment, animals, particularly dogs, weren't just companions, they were part of the sensory fabric of the place, adding an extra layer of life and texture to the experience. But how did the dogs fit into this sensory landscape? The answer lies not just in their presence, but in their role within Roman society. Dogs, much like humans, were active participants in the social and cultural dynamics of the time. When you look at ancient depictions of Roman baths, there's often a dog or two lounging beside their owners, soaking in the same warmth and luxury. Some historians argue that this wasn't just a sign of wealth, it was also a sign of Roman affection for their pets. In a society that prized loyalty and companionship, it wasn't surprising that dogs were included in such important rituals. For the wealthy Romans, having a dog with them in the bathhouse was about more than just social status. It was also about the comfort and companionship that the animal provided. The Roman baths were a communal space, and everything that happened in them was an opportunity for interaction. Your dog, sitting by your side, would have been another way to engage with others. Imagine reclining on a marble bench, chatting with a fellow Roman, and every now and then reaching down to pet your loyal dog. It wasn't just a personal indulgence, it was a shared experience. But what about those less wealthy Romans? Did they have the luxury of bringing their dogs to the baths? In a way, yes. While the elite might have made more of a spectacle out of their pets by bringing them to the baths, the more common Romans still had access to the communal baths. They didn't bring dogs for show, they brought them because they were a part of their lives. Roman baths were often free or inexpensive, and they were designed to accommodate people of all classes. The fact that dogs were welcome in these spaces shows just how integral they were to Roman life, regardless of social status. That said, the presence of dogs in the baths wasn't without its complications. Just like today, some people may have had pets that weren't exactly well-behaved. Imagine trying to relax in a bath only to have a dog come bounding up to you, tail wagging and barking in excitement. Historians believe that while the baths were a space of relaxation, they could also be chaotic, especially with animals around. Some records suggest that bathhouse attendants had to step in occasionally to ensure that the dogs behaved. After all, these were public spaces, and just as you wouldn't want a loud conversation disturbing the peace, you definitely wouldn't want a dog causing a commotion. But let's be real. There's something undeniably charming about the idea of these dogs lounging alongside their owners, soaking up the atmosphere of the baths. They were not just passive bystanders, they were part of the whole experience. Imagine a dog contentedly laying on the heated floor, letting the warmth seep into its bones, while its owner enjoys the soothing waters of the bath. It's a picture of quiet contentment, one that would have been repeated countless times across the Roman Empire. Dogs, however, weren't the only animals that found their way into the Roman bathhouses. The Romans had a range of pets, and some, like birds, were also brought into these communal spaces. Birds, often kept for their song or their beauty, would perch on their owner's shoulder or rest nearby, adding another layer of life to the space. It's easy to imagine the peaceful chirping of a bird as you soak in the warm water, a soft contrast to the murmurs of conversation and the occasional clink of coins. These pets weren't just ornaments to the baths, they were part of the Roman social fabric. The Roman baths were one of the few places where people of all social strata could gather and interact. The presence of animals, then, was part of what made the experience so communal and unique. The dog at your side wasn't just a pet, it was a bridge between you and the world around you. It was a living reminder that life, at its core, is about companionship and shared experiences. As you settle deeper into the warm water, feeling the muscles in your back loosen, it's easy to imagine what it must have been like in those busy bathhouses, with dogs lounging, birds chirping, and the scent of oils and perfumes filling the air. It was a space that, despite its chaotic nature, offered a rare moment of peace. And at the center of it all was the bond between people and their pets, an unspoken connection that transcended class, age, and even time. Historians still debate how much of the Roman bath experience was truly relaxing and how much of it was about status and socializing. Was it all about luxury, or was it simply a necessity of Roman life? One thing is for sure. Pets played a key role in this experience, transforming the bathhouse from a place of mere hygiene to a space of comfort, companionship, and relaxation. Whether they were lapdogs, working dogs, or simply companions, the pets in the Roman baths were part of a tradition that would continue to influence how humans and animals interacted for centuries to come. By now, you're probably getting a sense of how deeply integrated pets were into the fabric of Roman life, especially in places as social as the public bathhouses. But let's pause for a second and look at another aspect of these baths that might surprise you: the bathhouse itself. Not just a pool with water, but a marvel of Roman engineering and luxury. The bathhouse wasn't just a place to clean up, it was an architectural masterpiece designed to appeal to all the senses. Roman baths were built to be luxurious, sensory-rich experiences, and this attention to detail extended to every part of the bathing ritual. First, the sheer scale of these bathhouses is hard to imagine. The largest bathhouses in Rome were massive, often covering multiple acres. The baths of Caracalla, for example, were built to hold thousands of people at once, with elaborate facilities including not just baths, but also libraries, exercise areas, and gardens. These baths weren't just about cleanliness, they were about relaxation and pleasure. The Romans understood the power of atmosphere. Marble, mosaics, and statues were all part of the experience, creating a space that was both grand and soothing. But back to the animals for a moment, pets played a big role in contributing to this atmosphere. Dogs weren't just lying around on the floors for warmth, they were adding to the sense of life in the baths. It wasn't uncommon to see dogs walking alongside their owners through these beautiful, steam-filled halls. The presence of pets added a touch of warmth and familiarity to what could otherwise be an overwhelming space. And because bathhouses were communal, the simple act of bringing your dog with you to relax wasn't just about comfort. It was about making the experience more human, more relatable. Historians still argue about the role of dogs in Roman bathhouses, whether they were purely symbols of wealth or if they played a more essential, everyday role in Roman society. Some scholars suggest that the act of bringing a pet to the bathhouse was an expression of Roman vanity, a way for the wealthy to flaunt their status. But others argue that it was more practicality. After all, dogs were part of daily Roman life, and why wouldn't you bring them with you? After all, they were often part of the family, and in many cases, they even lived in the same spaces as their human owners. Dogs were simply integrated into the Roman world in ways that may seem odd to us today. But it wasn't just the presence of dogs that added life to the Roman baths. The sounds, sights, and even the smells of the baths contributed to the sensory overload. Imagine the steam rising from the hot pools, mingling with the scent of oils and perfumes. The murmur of conversations, the soft splash of water as someone enters the pool. These were the sounds of Roman life. And interspersed with these everyday noises were the occasional barks of dogs, or the fluttering of birds perched on people's shoulders or sitting nearby. It was a symphony of sensory inputs, where animals were part of the soundtrack. As you lie back in the warm water, the sensation of floating almost feels like the same moment Romans would have experienced. With the occasional bark of a dog and the quiet chatter of bathers all around you, it's clear that the bathhouse wasn't just about cleanliness. It was about the full experience. It was a place to socialize, to relax, to find peace and companionship. And interspersed with these everyday noises were the occasional barks of dogs, or the fluttering of birds perched on people's shoulders or sitting nearby. It was a symphony of sensory inputs, where animals were part of the soundtrack. As you lie back in the warm water, the sensation of floating almost feels like the same moment Romans would have experienced. With the occasional bark of a dog and the quiet chatter of bathers all around you, it's clear that the bathhouse wasn't just about cleanliness. It was about the full experience. It was a place to socialize, to relax, to find peace and companionship. And in this environment, pets weren't just animals. They were an essential part of the whole ritual. Dogs in the bathhouses also provided a sense of security. In a busy, crowded public space, having a dog by your side could give you a sense of protection, a small comfort in an otherwise chaotic world. Romans were keenly aware of the importance of security, especially in public spaces, and a dog was a loyal companion who could alert you to danger or simply provide comfort in the face of unfamiliar situations. Despite all these social and cultural implications, historians still debate the exact reasons for why pets were included in Roman baths. Was it a symbol of wealth, a reflection of a deep connection between humans and animals, or simply a matter of practicality? It's likely that the answer lies somewhere in the middle. The presence of dogs in Roman baths was about much more than just wealth. It was about the interconnectedness of Roman life, where animals, humans, and social rituals were all part of a larger, more cohesive whole. And when we think about it, isn't there something oddly familiar about the role pets play in our lives today? Much like their Roman counterparts, our pets serve as companions, comforters, and, in many ways, symbols of our identity. Just as the Romans brought their dogs to the baths, we invite our pets into our lives, bringing them into our homes, our offices, and even our social gatherings. The tradition of sharing moments with our pets, whether it's at a bathhouse or on the couch, is one that has transcended millennia. Moreover, the baths were a place where Romans of all social classes could gather. The rich and the poor, the military and the commoners could all meet in this public space. The presence of pets, especially dogs, helped to break down some of the barriers between the classes. Dogs didn't care if their owner was a senator or a soldier. They were there to share the experience of the bath, providing a little bit of grounding in a space that could otherwise feel quite grand and intimidating. This blend of social classes in the baths, coupled with the easygoing presence of dogs, helped make the bathhouse a truly communal space, one where the lines of class and status blurred, even if only for a few hours. Some scholars argue that this practice of bringing dogs to the baths was a reflection of Roman society's fundamental view of pets. They weren't just seen as animals to be kept at home, they were part of the larger social ecosystem, integrated into the everyday rituals and the very fabric of Roman culture. And while modern society often keeps pets relegated to the private sphere of the home, the Romans saw their pets as public symbols, just as much a part of the city as the marble columns, grand public forums, and bustling marketplaces. Dogs in the baths, then, were not just a curiosity, but an essential piece of the Roman social puzzle. One interesting debate that still exists among historians is whether the Roman practice of bringing dogs to public spaces like the baths was a reflection of the Roman view of animals as companions or as objects. Some argue that dogs, like other animals, were treated primarily as tools, working creatures who helped their owners in various ways. But others believe that the bond between Romans and their pets went beyond utility. It was a relationship built on mutual affection and respect. Dogs, after all, were seen as loyal, protective, and loving companions, qualities that made them beloved members of the family. The role of animals in Roman life is still a topic of much discussion, but there's no doubt that the bathhouses provided a unique setting for exploring this relationship. Imagine, if you will, the scene. You, soaking in the warmth of the tepidarium, surrounded by the soft chatter of fellow bathers, the occasional splash of water, and the contented sighs of dogs lying beside their owners. It's a serene image, one where humans and animals exist in perfect harmony, sharing a moment of relaxation and peace. As you rest there, it's hard not to feel the connection to these ancient bathers. They too used the baths as a way to unwind, to socialize, and to form connections, whether with their fellow Romans or with the dogs that accompanied them. In that way, the Roman bathhouse becomes more than just a historical relic. It's a space that speaks to something universal, the need for community, for relaxation, and for the bonds we share with our pets. As you sink deeper into the warm embrace of the bath, it's time to reflect on a truly unique aspect of Roman bathhouses, the sense of order that permeated these spaces. In Roman society, everything had its place, and the baths were no exception. From the moment you entered the bathhouse, you would have encountered a complex system of rooms, each designed with a specific purpose in mind. The frigidarium, tepidarium, and caldarium were the main areas, but each room had its own rules and rituals. The flow of activity in these spaces, combined with the presence of animals, made Roman baths a truly intricate and fascinating environment. Picture yourself moving between these rooms, starting in the cold bath, then gradually making your way to the warmer, more relaxing spaces. The Romans had perfected the art of temperature control, using an advanced system called the hypocaust to heat the floors and walls of the bathhouse. This system was incredibly sophisticated, allowing the temperature in different rooms to vary, ensuring that the transition from one stage of the bathing process to another was smooth and comfortable. And amidst all this, dogs moved fluidly through the spaces with their owners, following them from one room to the next just as they would have done at home. For a Roman, the bathhouse was more than just a place to get clean. It was a ritual, a carefully choreographed experience. And much like everything else in Roman life, the presence of pets was carefully integrated into this ritual. Dogs weren't just there for the comfort of their owners, they were a part of the larger experience, contributing to the sense of order and structure that was so important in Roman society. The dog's presence was not just a casual addition, it was a symbol of the Roman household, a small but vital part of the larger picture. But this wasn't a practice confined to the wealthy elite. The presence of pets in public baths was a cultural norm, available to everyone in Roman society. Whether you were a patrician or a plebeian, a senator or a soldier, your dog could accompany you to the baths. Historians still debate whether the act of bringing a dog to the bathhouse was primarily about social status or if it was simply a natural extension of the Roman way of life. Some suggest that the ritual of bathing with pets was a demonstration of wealth, while others believe it was simply practical. After all, a dog wasn't just a luxury, it was a companion, a protector, and in many cases, a valued member of the family. For the lower classes, having a dog wasn't about displaying wealth. It was about having a companion to share in the day's activities. The dog in the bathhouse was a familiar figure, not just a status symbol, but a living, breathing part of daily Roman life. Whether chasing after a ball or lying beside its owner in the warm water, the dog was always there, offering comfort and companionship in a space that was anything but ordinary. Even in a bustling public space, the bond between human and animal remained strong, with pets playing an integral role in making the bathhouse a more human, more relatable space. Dogs were also deeply involved in other aspects of Roman society, beyond just the bathhouse. They were a constant presence in Roman homes, helping with tasks such as guarding, herding, and hunting. The presence of a dog at the bathhouse reflected the close connection between pets and their owners, a connection that extended beyond the walls of the home and into public spaces. In fact, the very act of bringing a dog to the baths was a demonstration of how integrated animals were into the everyday life of the Romans. Dogs weren't just accessories, they were trusted partners in both private and public life. Imagine the scene. The warm water, the scent of oils, the soft sound of conversation, and the occasional bark of a dog. For the Romans, this wasn't just a luxury, it was a way of life. It was a moment of connection, not just with other people, but with the animals who shared their world. In many ways, the Roman bathhouse was a reflection of Roman values: community, order, and the integration of animals into the everyday rhythm of life. Whether lounging in the warm water or watching their owners from a corner, dogs were an inextricable part of this environment, contributing to the sense of peace and familiarity that defined the Roman bathing experience. This integration of pets into public spaces was one of the things that set Roman society apart. While other civilizations may have kept animals out of public areas, the Romans saw their pets as more than just animals. They were companions, partners, and even symbols of status. The presence of dogs in the bathhouses wasn't just a quirk of Roman culture. It was a reflection of the deep affection and respect the Romans had for their animals. And as you continue to relax in the warm, steamy air of the bathhouse, you begin to understand just how much pets were woven into the fabric of Roman society, not just as animals, but as cherished family members. Now, as we shift our focus from the general experience of bathing in ancient Rome to the architectural wonder that housed all this activity, you'll see that the Roman bathhouse was a true marvel of engineering. The Romans were known for their ingenuity, and nowhere is this more apparent than in their bathhouses. These structures were not just designed to house the baths themselves, they were designed to create an immersive experience that appealed to every sense, from the cool marble floors beneath your feet to the calming aroma of essential oils in the air. One of the most impressive aspects of Roman bathhouse design was the hypocast system, an early form of underfloor heating that allowed bathhouses to maintain a comfortable temperature across their vast open spaces. This system consisted of a series of furnaces that would heat the air, which then circulated beneath the floors and through the walls, warming the bathhouse in a way that was not only effective but also remarkably sophisticated. It's hard not to appreciate the level of innovation the Romans achieved with something so essential to their daily lives. The fact that these bathhouses were open to the public, with access to heating systems that many modern buildings would envy, shows just how advanced Roman society was in terms of architecture and engineering. But this wasn't just about the luxury of warmth. The Romans understood that the human experience wasn't solely about comfort. There was also an aesthetic dimension to everything they did. Roman bathhouses were beautiful spaces, adorned with mosaic floors, marble columns, and statues of gods and goddesses that added to the sense of grandeur. The whole design was meant to create a sense of peace, calm, and beauty that would enhance the bathing experience. You can almost imagine the visual feast as you wander through the bathhouse. The sparkling mosaic tiles reflecting the soft light of the lamps, the intricate carvings on the marble pillars, and the grand statues that filled the space with a sense of awe. But let's circle back to the dogs for a moment. While the Romans were certainly serious about their bathhouse engineering, their love for their pets added an unexpected touch of life and warmth to these magnificent spaces. Dogs were not just passive participants. They were often seen running through these luxurious rooms, following their owners from one bathing area to the next. Their presence brought an extra layer of comfort and familiarity to an otherwise grand and sometimes intimidating environment. The bathhouse was designed for comfort, but dogs made it feel more human, more approachable. The relationship between the bathhouse and the dog is a fascinating one. The Romans didn't just bring their dogs into these spaces as a display of wealth, they brought them in because they were part of the routine, part of the ritual of daily life. Dogs were integrated into Roman society in such a way that it seemed natural for them to accompany their owners everywhere, including to the bathhouse. The fact that these public bathhouses, with their vast scale and grandeur, could accommodate both human and animal in the same space speaks to the Romans' understanding of the interconnectedness of their lives with their pets. And while the architecture of the bathhouse was certainly impressive, the true beauty of these spaces lay in how they functioned as communal spaces. Romans of all walks of life, whether you were a senator or a commoner, a soldier or a merchant, could come together in the bathhouse, enjoy the luxuries of the baths, and interact with each other. Pets, especially dogs, played a role in breaking down the social barriers that typically separated the classes. Dogs were a common denominator in the baths, making it easier for people to connect with one another. Whether you were lounging in the tepidarium with a dog by your side or enjoying a cool dip in the frigidarium, pets were the great leveler of social class. Historians still debate the deeper significance of pets in Roman public spaces. Were they purely symbolic, a demonstration of status? Or did they serve a more practical purpose in the Roman bathhouses, where the presence of animals helped make these otherwise overwhelming spaces feel more human? While the answer is likely a mix of both, what's clear is that the Romans viewed their pets, especially dogs, as integral parts of their daily lives, part of the fabric of their society. And the bathhouse, with its vast architecture and complex engineering, became the perfect stage for this integration. Imagine for a moment, you're soaking in the warm waters, a dog lying at your feet, while around you, Romans of all classes and backgrounds mingle, chat, and relax. The grand columns and statues of gods surround you, but it's the sight of a dog napping peacefully by its owner's side that really captures the heart of the experience. The Roman bathhouse wasn't just a place for physical cleansing, it was a place for emotional and social renewal, where the bonds between people and their pets could be nurtured. As you continue to soak in the warm waters of the Roman bathhouse, your mind drifts to the intricate architecture and the social dynamics that unfolded within these magnificent spaces. The bathhouse wasn't just a place for bathing. It was a cultural phenomenon, a microcosm of Roman society. Everything about these spaces, from their engineering to their atmosphere, was designed to encourage social interaction. And that's where the role of pets, especially dogs, really starts to shine. As much as they were symbols of wealth and status, they were also part of the larger social fabric of Roman life. Dogs in the bathhouse weren't just for show. They were companions, comforters, and, in some cases, even icebreakers. You can picture it now. Romans, comfortably ensconced in the warmth of the tepidarium, chatting casually with friends, while their dogs lay quietly at their feet, contributing to the calming ambiance. There's a subtle humor in imagining how the bathhouse, with its grandiosity and social gravitas, was also punctuated by the simple presence of pets. It's almost as if the dogs were grounding the whole experience, making it feel a little more human, a little more relatable. In a way, these dogs helped to diffuse the sometimes intimidating atmosphere of the grand bathhouse, where class distinctions and social expectations loomed large. But dogs weren't just there to make things feel more comfortable. They were part of the ongoing cultural exchange that took place in the bathhouse. Romans were a social people, and the bathhouse was one of the few places where people of all classes could mix. While the elite enjoyed their private rooms and luxury, the common folk also had access to the bathhouse's communal spaces. And in these spaces, dogs acted as a bridge between people. Whether you were lounging in the hot pools or resting on a cool marble bench, your dog could be there, acting as an unspoken link between you and the person next to you. In this way, dogs helped make the Roman bathhouse a place where friendships could be forged and deals could be made, where social hierarchies were temporarily blurred. While the Romans loved their dogs, the bathhouse was also a space where dogs weren't always free to roam as they pleased. Just like any busy public place, there were rules to keep order, and bathhouse attendants were there to ensure that dogs didn't cause too much trouble. Imagine, if you will, that a bathhouse attendant would occasionally have to step in and guide a mischievous dog away from a rowdy bather, or gently remind a dog owner to keep their pet from interrupting a private conversation. In many ways, the presence of dogs in the baths was like that of pets in our modern-day public spaces, both endearing and occasionally disruptive. Historians still debate how much dogs actually disrupted the peaceful atmosphere of the bathhouses. Some believe that they were a source of amusement and comfort, while others speculate that their presence may have occasionally caused a bit of chaos. Whether the dogs were causing minor disturbances or simply lounging quietly at their owner's feet, there's no denying that their presence added an extra layer of life and vitality to the bathhouse. A space that could have easily felt sterile and clinical instead became a living, breathing environment where animals and humans interacted in ways that were both intimate and public. As you float in the warm water, it's easy to imagine how this ritual of bathing with pets was both practical and comforting. The Romans didn't just take a bath to clean themselves, they used it as a means of connecting with others, relaxing, and finding some peace in the busy, chaotic world around them. And amidst all of this, the presence of dogs made the experience feel a little more homey, a little more grounded. The bathhouse wasn't just about luxury, it was about life in its full, bustling, and sometimes imperfect form. But the presence of pets in the bathhouses wasn't just about comfort, it was also about the Roman perception of animals. While we might think of pets today as creatures that are pampered and spoiled, the Romans had a more practical relationship with their animals. Dogs were seen as companions, but they were also tools, guardians, hunters, and even workers. The fact that dogs were brought into such public spaces suggests that Romans saw their pets as part of their functional, everyday lives, rather than mere decorative elements. This was a culture that embraced utility, and dogs were an essential part of that. And while the Roman bathhouse was a place where the rich could flaunt their wealth and the commoners could enjoy a moment of luxury, it was also a place where pets played an essential practical role. Dogs helped keep watch, accompany their owners, and even bring a bit of joy to the public baths. The bond between humans and dogs in Roman society wasn't just sentimental. It was a practical, functional relationship that played out in the very spaces designed for relaxation and leisure. So, as you sink deeper into the water, surrounded by the soft sounds of conversation, the gentle warmth, and the occasional bark of a dog, it becomes clear that the Roman bathhouse was more than just a place to cleanse the body. It was a space to cleanse the soul, a place where humans and animals could share in the experience of relaxation and renewal together. As the soothing warmth of the water continues to melt away the stresses of the day, it's important to consider another element that made the Roman bathhouse so remarkable: its association with health and wellness. Bathing in ancient Rome wasn't just about hygiene. It was a fundamental part of Roman medical practice. Romans were deeply invested in the concept of physical and mental health, and the bathhouse became a central space for improving both. The healing properties of the baths were widely believed, and many Romans viewed their daily visit to the bath as an essential ritual for maintaining their health and longevity. The Romans had a sophisticated understanding of how heat, water, and massage could contribute to well-being. The warm and cold pools, the massages, and even the steam baths were all designed to stimulate circulation, relax the muscles, and cleanse the body. You might be feeling the effects yourself, relaxing deeper into the water as the heat penetrates your muscles and your mind. The Romans took these therapeutic aspects seriously, and the bathhouse served as a sort of public wellness center where one could not only relax but also seek relief from various ailments. Interestingly, the presence of dogs in these healing environments is not just a quirky historical tidbit. Animals were often included in Roman healing rituals, and dogs in particular were believed to have therapeutic qualities. It was common in ancient Rome for dogs to be involved in various medical practices, from guarding sick people to providing emotional comfort. Some ancient texts even describe dogs being used in medical settings, where their presence was thought to have a calming effect on patients. In this way, dogs in the Roman bathhouse may have served not just as companions, but as part of the broader wellness culture that surrounded these communal spaces. Historians still argue over how far Romans took the idea of animal therapy. While some suggest that dogs had a more significant role in public health than previously acknowledged, others claim that their role was simply as a comfort or status symbol. However, there's no denying that the presence of pets, especially dogs, in these spaces created an atmosphere of calm and relaxation that was deeply tied to the Roman approach to wellness. The dog wasn't just an accessory, it was an integral part of the healing environment, contributing to the tranquil, restorative atmosphere of the baths. As you sink deeper into the water, think of the ways in which the Romans blended their belief in health with their social and cultural rituals. The bathhouse was a place to soothe the body, but also to strengthen the mind and spirit. And in this space, the dog was a constant companion, adding a layer of comfort and familiarity to an experience that could otherwise be seen as intimidating. The fact that dogs were present in such a public and grand space shows how deeply intertwined animals were in Roman daily life. They weren't just luxuries or symbols of status, they were a part of the larger Roman approach to living well, both physically and mentally. You might even start to wonder whether the dogs in the baths were the true, unsung heroes of the Roman wellness tradition. After all, the comfort they provided went beyond mere companionship. They were part of a system that believed in the healing power of relaxation, and their presence only enhanced the overall experience. It's not hard to imagine the soothing effects of having a loyal dog resting by your side as you relax in the calming waters. For many Romans, this wasn't just a physical experience, it was an emotional one too. In many ways, the Roman bathhouse served as a symbol of Roman society's broader approach to health: holistic, communal, and accessible. While today, health spas and wellness centers might be considered luxurious, for the Romans, the bathhouse was a public institution, a place where anyone could come to improve their physical and mental well-being. The dogs, quietly lounging by their owners, added a touch of warmth to this public ritual, making it a little more personal, a little more intimate. In a world where health was often tied to class and privilege, the bathhouse was one of the few places where these lines were blurred. And in this shared space, pets, dogs in particular, served as companions that bridged these divides. Whether you were a wealthy senator or a humble tradesman, the dog was a companion that was as important as any human friend or family member. In this way, the Roman bathhouse and the dogs that filled it represented something profoundly human: the need for connection, comfort, and healing. As you sit back in the warmth of the water, with the scent of oils filling the air and the soft sounds of murmuring conversation around you, it's clear that the bathhouse was a space where people could not only cleanse themselves physically, but also find solace emotionally. The dogs, as loyal companions, were an integral part of that experience, enhancing the social and therapeutic atmosphere of this remarkable institution. Now that we've explored the therapeutic and social dynamics of Roman bathhouses, it's time to reflect on their origins, how these luxurious spaces came into being, and how their evolution mirrored the growth of Roman civilization itself. The story of Roman baths is as much a tale of cultural development as it is one of innovation and architecture. Roman baths didn't just emerge overnight. They evolved over centuries, from simple public baths to the grand monumental structures that we associate with the Roman Empire today. It's interesting to note that the concept of public bathing wasn't invented by the Romans. In fact, the practice of bathing was common in many ancient cultures, including the Greeks, the Egyptians, and the Persians. However, the Romans took the idea of public bathing to an entirely new level, creating spaces that were not just for cleaning the body, but also for relaxation, socialization, and even intellectual pursuits. They combined functionality with opulence, and their engineering expertise ensured that bathhouses became an essential part of Roman life. The first Roman baths, or balneae, were modest affairs compared to the sprawling complexes that would come later. These early bathhouses were essentially large public pools that were used to cleanse the body, and they were often located near important Roman forums or civic spaces. The wealthy might have had their own private baths, but for the majority of Romans, the public baths were the only option. These early baths were relatively simple structures with a focus on practicality. But over time, as Roman society grew more prosperous and ambitious, bathhouses began to take on a new role. By the 1st century BCE, with the rise of the Roman Empire, the baths became more elaborate and complex. Under the reign of Emperor Augustus, public bathhouses began to spread across the empire. They were no longer just places for personal hygiene. They became large, multifunctional spaces where Romans could engage in all sorts of activities, whether it was soaking in the hot pools, exercising in the gymnasium, or attending intellectual lectures in the adjoining libraries. The baths became the ultimate symbol of Roman luxury, and their design reflected the grandeur of Roman architecture. It wasn't just the physical space that was impressive. The Romans also developed advanced heating systems to ensure that their baths were comfortable year-round. The hypocast system, which used underfloor heating to warm the floors and walls of the bathhouses, was one of the Romans' greatest innovations. This allowed bathhouses to stay warm even during the coldest months, making them a truly year-round experience. The presence of dogs in these spaces seems almost fitting. With such an advanced and comfortable setting, why wouldn't your dog want to join you in the bath? After all, if the Romans could design a space that catered to every aspect of their comfort, it makes perfect sense that their pets would be an integral part of the experience. While the larger public baths continued to grow in size and complexity, they were always centered around the idea of public accessibility. Roman baths were public institutions designed to cater to the entire population, not just the wealthy elite. This made them incredibly democratic spaces. The fact that dogs were included in these spaces only reinforces this notion of communal life. Whether you were a senator or a commoner, you could enjoy the benefits of the bathhouse, and you could bring your dog with you. This democratic nature of the baths was one of the things that made them so appealing to Romans of all classes. It was a place where, for a brief period, the social order could be momentarily suspended, and people could connect with one another, share experiences, and even share a space with their pets. As the empire grew, so did the bathhouses. They became larger, more elaborate, and more integral to the fabric of Roman society. By the time of the late Empire, monumental bath complexes, such as the Baths of Caracalla and the Baths of Diocletian, stood as symbols of Roman grandeur. These massive structures could accommodate thousands of bathers at once, and featured not only hot and cold pools, but also libraries, exercise rooms, and gardens. The presence of dogs in these grand settings is a reminder that the baths weren't just spaces for luxury. They were also spaces for relaxation, companionship, and even social equality. Historians still debate how these grand bathhouses were funded. Some argue that they were paid for by wealthy patrons as a way to gain favor with the public, while others suggest that they were funded by the state as part of the Roman imperial agenda. Whatever the source of funding, there's no doubt that these bathhouses were seen as a vital part of Roman life. They were public spaces, open to everyone, and they played an essential role in the health and social life of the Roman people. And let's not forget that dogs were there through it all. Whether you were in one of the earlier, simpler bathhouses or the grand, luxurious complexes, dogs were a constant presence. They were companions to the wealthy, but also part of the daily routine for commoners. As Roman society became more complex, so did the role of dogs in the bathhouse. They were no longer just pets. They were participants in a deeply ingrained cultural ritual, a symbol of the close bond between Romans and their animals. As you imagine walking through the grand marble halls of these bathhouses, you can almost feel the weight of Roman history around you. The presence of dogs in these spaces wasn't just a quirky detail. It was a reflection of how the Romans viewed their relationship with the animals that shared their lives. The bathhouse, a symbol of Roman engineering and luxury, was also a place where humans and animals coexisted in harmony, sharing the same space, the same comforts, and the same cultural rituals.